Hello. This is Alisia Young, and welcome to Teach Me Freedom. This podcast is about learning how to live a freer life from authors, entrepreneurs, and experts. Those who have done it and who teach others how to do it as well, and what it feels like while applying those methods to our lives along the way. Every episode will deliver resources, anecdotes, and/or reviews to support you in living a more freedom-filled life. Let's jump in. Please note the video version of this episode is available on YouTube at Teach Me Freedom. The link is also mentioned in the show notes. Enjoy. Freedom Finders, welcome to part 2 of the conversation with Dr. Dawn Asher, author of Who Gets Promoted, Who Doesn't, and Why, 12 Things You'd Better Do If You Want to Get Ahead. We last left off where Dr. Dawn was beginning to take us through what we need to do because bosses cannot read our mind. Let's continue.
Bosses can't read minds. So people sit around thinking the boss knows what I want. No, the boss does not. The boss cannot read your mind. So you have to sit down and tell your boss where you're at, where you're going. And they have to hear that. Now, they may not help you, but you need to make sure that they know what you want because they cannot read minds. And they tend to respond to the squeaky wheel in, let's say you manage 8 people. And here's Alisia. She's always good. She's always wonderful. All her work is crisp. She never complains. I may not look to you. I may not know you want promoted. But most of all, I may just enjoy the fact that you're a great producer for me. And I'm not interested in worry. You don't seem worried to me about anything. So why would I go and poke you? See, so you need to sit down with your boss and make sure that they know what you want out of the next 18 months, what you want out of the next quarter and the next year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So is there anything that you would add or change that you've written in the book based on what we've experienced with this pandemic?
Yes, there's a hesitancy among people to move during the pandemic. And so I would encourage people to let your bosses know you'll move. Being willing to move can be a tremendous breakout opportunity, especially for young people. Young people have become the opposite of mobile. So, historical norms, young people moved around a lot more than older people. But now they're not because it's so expensive to move to a new town. Because let's just start with the fact that you need first, last, and deposit. Yeah. So just make up a rent. Let's say your rent is $1,500.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, we'll go with $1,500. You're going to need almost $5,000 just to get in a new house somewhere, to move somewhere. So there's solutions to that, to be more nimble, but this is why people are not moving. And also people are taking advantage of their parents. And I don't mean taking advantage of in the sense of absconding with something from their parents, but they're taking advantage of their parents' largesse. And so they're driving a parent's car, living somewhat supported by their parents. And so being willing to move in this pandemic could be a career breakout. The other thing that is new during this pandemic is you have to prove that you can both be productive remotely, but here's an even more subtle point that's very important. You have to prove you can onboard yourself with a new team without necessarily even meeting them face to face. So I was working with a series of clients who they would get right to the end of the job search process and they're about to be offered a position. And then the assignment just kind of stalls. And one of my clients figured out what the problem was. Employers couldn't figure out how do you onboard somebody if they're going to live in Milwaukee and the job's in Miami. And so with one of my clients, we developed an onboarding system that works completely remotely. And you have to tell your potential employer. Now, this counts for promotions too. Why would I promote you to Miami if I don't know? Well, how are you going to get on with the team? That team's been formed. They've known each other for 2 years at least. And here you are trying to come into the team from Milwaukee. So this, you have to prove your own onboarding. So it's a step-by-step process of how you're going to meet all the people on the team, how you're going to introduce yourself, how you're going to be available to them, and how you might form some common interest group meetings. The last guy he joined a new company. He started an affinity group called I Just Got a Puppy. It turns out a lot of people just got a puppy. So he formed this affinity group, and he became kind of like semi-famous in Miami with this company. And he was still in Milwaukee, but he would get like trainers to come on to their meetings and say, well, if your puppy's eating pillows, this is what you do. And so that build your own onboarding plan can be make or break, especially in organizations that they can't pull the trigger. They know they need some help in Miami. They know that you can do it, even though you live in Milwaukee. So that little push and nudge is to say, well, this is my onboarding plan. I think this will smooth my entry into the team in Miami. And that can be a big plus. And that's what it's not in the book, of course, because the pandemic was not on when the book was released.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very, very innovative and very that takes a lot of initiative. And a question that comes from that is, and this may come from me being too nice sometimes, is there any chance that might rub the company the wrong way of thinking like, oh, who is this person thinking that they're telling us what to do? Or is that just the wrong attitude to have?
That's I wouldn't call it the wrong attitude, but I think it's how you couch it. So when you promote this idea to your boss in Miami, you say, I've given quite a lot of thought to onboarding in Miami. Here's an onboarding plan that I developed myself. I can implement any or all of this. Of course, I will follow your lead.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, but it breaks that barrier that the problem is, well, how do we actually bring this person on and get them up and active and productive in this new role during the pandemic? So it solves that problem.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Don. All right.
You're welcome. And on the issue of being productive remotely, you just have to build a proof list. Most students today have taken at least one online class. So young people are actually ahead of older people. Young people have been productive remotely. It's not a theory to them, and it's not even new. So make a list of all the things you've ever done remotely or on your own. And that becomes your proof list that you can be productive without going into an office where people can look at you work.
Oh, that's a really good assignment to do. I'm gonna write that as an action for myself, because this pandemic has led to a lot of opportunities and experiences of doing a lot of things remote that I haven't even written down or thought anything of these things. Yeah, that's a great action task. You talked about one of the important things, especially when it comes to the pandemic, is being mobile and just going for those opportunities. So you've also talked about the importance of timing and strategizing to be available and thought of and visible for opportunities that come up. So although you touched on this, I wanted to see, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that topic?
Well, I'll say it this way, and I think this phrase is actually in the book. Timing is more important than talent. So everyone always thinks that, if you have the talent, that talent will show and then you'll be chosen. No, you also have to be available. And so one of the things that the fast trackers that I studied, they were really good at representing that they could step away from their current assignments and take on a new role. And so it was they could orchestrate this story, this narrative. Yeah, I can be ready next quarter on the first day. I will wrap up this project. I will assign this back to IT. I'll give Gail this account because it's a problem account and she knows how to manage it. And I've been bringing up Paulie and I know he can do this. And I'm going to be ready on the first day of the new quarter. Now, is any of that true? Not necessarily. Maybe if they walked out, the whole thing would fall apart. But they had a narrative about how, if they were to step out, that all of this would be carry on without them, and they would be available for the new role. So this timing thing, it's about image. It's also about work management. It's not doing work, it's managing work so that you can hand it off. If in the book, there's a whole series of things on irreplaceable people. Irreplaceable people cannot be promoted. So this is about making yourself not just replaceable, but eminently replaceable, but also, and here's the key, replaceable on the calendar that matches the new assignment, not the old assignment. So if the new assignment starts in Miami on January 1st, you can wrap it up and be ready to take on that role. So that has all to do with timing, image, and work management. I hope that all made sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love how you phrase things. It's just so beautiful to hear. And
you're too kind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a pleasure to read what you've written, but also to hear you speak out loud. And yeah, just even that example of what you said and that irreplaceability, indispensability, because I know as you're talking about that, I'm just thinking of opportunities that came up and that I let go because I was so devoted to where I was. And then those opportunities ended and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have just taken the other one. But I was so comfortable.
Just take the assignment. You'll figure it out.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so my next question is you talk about the suction effect and the importance of making your boss look good. So can you expand on what the suction effect is, along with why it's so important to make our bosses look good? And then a part that connects to this is, because I know sometimes there's hesitation there because, and you talk about this more, about the importance of managing your ego, managing insecurity, and managing that desire for recognition. You also touched on that aspect of being irreplaceable. So can you discuss these elements of how it ties into the suction effect and why these things are not as important? So the ego, insecurity, recognition, desires are not as important as making your boss look good in connection to the suction effect. I hope that made sense.
It did. So the suction effect for your fan base is that when it's a law of physics that when an object moves through a medium, the backside of that object creates suction. So that's true any object, any medium. And so in the terms of career development, if somebody is having a meteoric rise, they create behind them a tremendous amount of change and opportunity where you can raise your hand and step up right behind them. Now you can attach yourself to them as a lieutenant and then you go where they go. But just watching them go by, I mean, it doesn't matter. Maybe you don't even work for them. But if they're in your office and they're going to move up, they're going to create opportunity underneath them. So that's the suction effect. And so one way of saying it is attach yourself to superstars, because that can actually be a great career management technique. So maybe the superstar is the future CEO, but you can ride that as far as you want to. So maybe they make a move that goes in a direction you don't want, or they're now going to move to New York and you don't want to live in New York. Then you step off of that. But it can be a very powerful phenomenon while you're riding in that power wave behind the person that's moving up through the organization. So that's one. The other thing is make your boss look good. This causes people a lot of pain. When people have a bad boss, they're like, why would I want to make him look good? I don't even like this guy. He's a loser. Then you have the wrong boss and you need a new boss. Okay. So it's almost a test. If I say to you, make your boss look good, and that makes you wince, then you've got the wrong boss. You need a new boss. So why do you make your boss look good? Your boss is your constituency. Young people often don't realize this. They'll come into an organization and they want to have friends and they want to have peers and they want to go out for, whatever it is that people in that crew go. Maybe they have a 5 o'clock club and they all go to the bars for one drink before going home. They want to be in that club. That club is great. I have no problem with that club, but never forget that your boss is your constituency. And you have to keep your boss happy, and you have to make your boss look good. And when you do your job, but you don't take care of your boss, this is a whole concept called managing up. If you do your job, but you don't take care of your boss, you will be harmed. So I'll give you just one example because it's so easy to see. You got to figure out what your boss cares about. And so I was working with this woman whose boss cared about whether she came to the city council meetings on time in a suit and stood there with the rest of the crew from that department and waited for their time to present. Okay, city council meetings were long, chaotic, and boring. And so she would go down to her office, which was in the same building, and she would time it so that, we're probably going on pretty soon. And she would show up and walk in and make her presentation. And she thought that she was doing her job. But that's not what her boss cared about. What her boss cared about was having his crew there looking professional and paying attention to what the city council is doing. Mm-hmm. They had you might just call it a disagreement about what was important. Well, when you have a disagreement about what's important with your boss will win every time. So she got fired. Short of this, Alisia, she got fired because he told her, you've got to come here, you've got to be here, you got to sit next to me. And she ignored this direction, and she was separated from the org. So that's an example of not making your boss look good. Cover for your boss. Think about your boss's family. You might fight bitterly in your family, but when a threat from the outside comes along, you close ranks, you protect each other. That's the relationship you have with your boss. You protect her. You make sure that attacks against her are deflected, or you fight back against them. You don't let bad information float around the organization about your boss. You counteract that. So that's all part of making your boss look good. So I hope that makes sense. Now, the third thing you were talking about is basically emotional maturity. So there's a lot of data on this. There's a concept called emotional intelligence. It's been around for, I don't know, a long time now. And people who rise far can control their emotions. It's not that they don't have them, but they wait for the time and the place that will get what they want and advance their own agenda. And so if somebody offends you in a meeting, you might wait and go sit down with them privately and say, don't talk about me like that in front of other people. But that's very different and also way more effective than calling that person out back in front of everybody. So emotional maturity is part of the executive skill set. And I'll say it 50 million times, you can be very emotional, but you control that till you are in the time and the place that will optimize your outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes complete sense. Yeah.
I'm glad I made some sense today.
Making complete, total sense. Yes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Wow. This is amazing. Okay. So my next question for you is, and this is a big one, because this is a huge aspect of the podcast, like the kind of the root of the podcast, but also I feel like it's something a lot of us go through. I hope I'm not stereotyping millennials, but I think it's something we're kind of known for, is this, like, we want to do meaningful work, but we also want to take care of ourselves and be passionate about what we're doing. And so can you please walk us through you made 3 distinctions, and I love this. You say that we need to distinguish between ourselves and our job, that we do not equate to our job, that we do not equate to our career, and our job does not equate to our career. Can you distinguish or can you explain why it's so important to make these distinctions for us to be successful as we develop our careers?
Okay, so I've been around a while, and I've seen some disastrous career theories run up against reality. And one of the worst is if you dedicate yourself to the organization will take care of you. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've got to learn this. So there is a term in economics for an unequal loyalty. And so when you have loyalty to an organization that has no loyalty to you, it's a mistake. It's a strategic error. You're giving away something of great value for nothing. So companies will fire you because it's Wednesday. They'll fire you because your name starts with the first half of the alphabet. They'll fire you because you're left-handed and the boss had a left-handed boyfriend last. They'll fire you because you're a Vikings fan. They'll fire you because this is the most ridiculous one I ever heard of. Was the organization in this department was $55,000 short, so they literally went down the list of people in the department and found someone who was paid $55,000, and they fired that person. That's organizations, and that's what they will do. So you don't have loyalty back. As long as your interests merge, then pursue the interests of the organization. But when they diverge, then, square off your shoulders and walk is where that goes. So you are not your career is important because it's in the recent history of employment in the United States, and by recent, I mean the last 40 years. That has not worked out. That has not been that's not been a positive experience for the people that have done it. So make sure that you keep for you a personality that's not tied to your job, values that don't need to be expressed at work, activities that satisfy you outside of the employment arena, because that's just sensible. So you do not equal your career. And your career does not equal your job. This I want to state because this is about strategy. So sometimes people will not want to take an assignment because it's not prestigious. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's a variety of lifestyle things they don't like about it. But a job is temporary and a career is a long-term. It's like long thinking versus short-term thinking. Jobs short-term, careers long-term. Take that assignment in lower dusty nowhere, turn that unit around, get a great reputation, and it will advance your career. So you are not your job, you are not your career, and your career is not your job. So I guess I want everybody to have all three of those. Having said that, if you want to stand out in today's career marketplace, it's not as hard as it used to be, frankly. Taking stretch assignments, being willing to take a 6 a.m. flight, not complaining about connecting to go across country on planes. I could give you a whole list of things. Just don't be that person that whines a lot, and you will actually stand out by that alone. So I'm going to encourage your fans that you don't have to sell yourself to an organization, but just by being a little willing to do what's needed to be done, you can wow your boss and wow your boss's boss at what I think is fairly low cost.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much for expanding on that. I think that was one of the major big things that I took away from your book, and I think a lot of things expand from that key comment. So thank you for that. So I'll jump into the next question, which is, and this is a term that I didn't know about before. So what is an autodidact, and why is it important for us to develop this trait?
Well, autodidact means that you can self-teach. So I think it's the Latin roots of those two parts of the word. So auto is self and didact is teach. So autodidacts teach themselves. So autodidacts are always first, because by the time there's a training program to solve problem X, that problem's been around for a while and it's been rubbing in the shoe of the boss. And if you can walk up and say, hey, I can solve this problem, I can teach myself to solve this problem, then you get to be a superstar. But autodidacts are first. They're ahead of everybody. And so it's a skill to develop. So there's, I'm not talking about getting extra degrees here. I'm talking about just looking into something until you figure out the solution to it. That's an autodidact. But it also includes, incredibly mundane things that it's like, the company needs you to know this stuff. I know a person who was fired because his boss came to him and said, you need to learn Spanish. And you could be the new foreman, and you're going to be in charge. And we're partnering up with these people in Latin America, and they're going to do the work over there. And you're going to go back and forth, and you're going to get a big fat promotion. And this guy says, I'm not learning Spanish. This is America. And so his boss said, yeah, and you're out, okay, because this is what we need. And, I don't care how you learn Spanish, but if you're not going to learn it, I'm going to find a foreman who can. So that's an example. It's a true example, and rather severe, but it's really clear what the company needed, and he would not step forward for. I don't want to guess at his motivations, but he's never had as good a position again. I know him, so that's an example of an autodidact, and it's for everything. It could be a software that is new, or it could be a different way of selling. It could be the ability to interact with a different type of client. It could be so many different things you can be an autodidact in.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you were going to ask about recommendations. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to when you say 3 recommendations.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so first off, I just want to, before jumping into that, I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to spend with us. And wow, it's phenomenal. Like you talked about my energy, your energy is infectious as well. And so the last question that I ask is, what are 3 top resources that you would recommend? Of course, your book, of course, that's a no-brainer, but 3 resources. They can be books, they can be websites, they can be like trainings. What 3 resources would you recommend for those, for what we discussed today, like becoming a careerist and taking ownership of the direction of your career?
Well, of course, I want to recommend my book, Who Gets Promoted and Who Doesn't and Why, and 12 Things You Better Do. Yeah, of course.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, which has been around for 10 years or so. There's a whole nonprofit foundation called Lean In. And I think that she really identified something. What she said in that book, among many other things, is that when she makes presentations to business groups, the women all ask, how did you do it? How did you make it so far as a mom? And she basically said that, when you have an opportunity, you lean into it. And then if later you then lean back because of child responsibilities, or let's say you have a sick parent, you're leaning back from a higher level. So if you lean in first, then when you do lean back, you're going to be an officer, you're going to be extremely well paid. So I think that book, Lean In, should be read by everybody, men and women, but mostly women, because it's a certain way of looking at a career that acknowledges that you're maybe going to be a parent, but that your advantage in that might be to make sure that you've gotten the most out of your career before that happens. And she's controversial, I know that, but I like her book a lot. I just found out about a book I'm going to read really soon called Machiavelli for Women. Machiavelli for Women. So this book was reviewed in the Wall Street Journal, and I'm going to get it. It talks about being a woman in corporate space and what it's like to occupy corporate space as a woman, and the competing demands on women that are frankly not there for men. So women who are too strong are considered brash and that evil word bossy. Whereas a man,
I thought you were going to say something else that started with a B as well.
No, I would not do that. But on the other hand, if they don't push, men will elbow past them. So I'm going to get this book and read it. I strongly recommend that people take a look at it. Another book, because I think one of the interesting keys about career management, you try to get the maximum amount of promotions where you're at. But if you cannot get promoted where you're at, it's time to switch organization. It's a fantastic time, Alisia. It is a fantastic time to be a careerist right now, because if you don't like your job, there's 100 companies that would like to give you a new job. So being able to switch companies, I was just working with an ambitious young woman who should know about your podcast, by the way. I was just working with her. She said, people advance in my company because somebody dies. Oh, so you're in an organization, you got 8 people around you, and you're like, okay, to get promoted, 8 of these people have to die because all 8 of them are ahead of me on this ladder. And so the proper response to that is to leave. You can't wait for people to die. You got to move faster than that. So I recommend this book, which is called Cracking the Hidden Job Market. It's a revolutionary book. It really tells how to find jobs before they're posted. And so that's like the secret sauce when it comes to finding new job opportunities. So those are a few of the resources. And on my website, there's 2 particularly useful things, and they're both free. One of them is career repair, which, as we discussed briefly, it's like, how do you fix a career problem? I just got out of prison. I just raised these 3 kids, which, interestingly enough, stay-at-home parents and released prisoners have the exact same problem. I think that's really interesting. Wow. They do. They have the same problem, and it has the same solution. But anyway, career repair is on the website for free, and salary negotiations is on the website for free. So if you're going to negotiate salary, check out my website, and it's right there on the right. It's a button that says salary negotiations.
Awesome. And all those links will also be, all the links and resources you mentioned will also be included in the show notes as well.
Well, I want to thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I'd love to be back whenever you want me back.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Dr. Don. This was an amazing experience, and wow, you made my day. And I know that you've given so much amazing advice to the Freedom Finders, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate your time as well. And just thank you for being so giving and so energetic. I'm feeling so motivated right now.
Same to you, Alisia. Same to you.
Thank you. And Freedom Finders, always remember to honor your time, honor your energy. Thank you for tuning in. And please make sure to check the show notes and connect with Dr. Dawn Asher. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Teach Me Freedom podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found it beneficial. Feel free to reach out to us at teachmefreedom2020@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the show on your favorite platform for streaming content. Feel free to comment and leave a 4 or 5-star review if you feel so inclined. Connect with you next time.